Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and what that means to teams and leaders and those that are interested in leadership or currently find themselves in a role that is leadership. So first off, let's talk about what emotional intelligence is. It's the capacity to recognize, understand, manage, and use emotions in ourselves and in others to foster positive interactions and impact positive decision making. So emotional intelligence is a term that's been around for pretty much the last century, and it's reviewed very well in several different books. The best reference I have is this one, Successful Intelligence. I actually will do a video on this book at some point, but this is more around just the specifics of emotional intelligence. So there's four quadrants that impact us in our thinking and how we do things: our self-awareness, our social awareness, our self-management, and our relationship management. Those four quadrants are what determine how you measure up in a emotional intelligence standpoint. So self-awareness is recognizing and understanding your own emotions, or what impacts your emotions, right? What makes you feel a certain way, what things bother you and what things don't. I don't use the word triggered because mature human beings should actually be in control of their emotions. Mature human beings should be able to control how they respond to people. So I'm talking to mature human beings here. So I'm not going to say emotions that are out of control, but your emotions, you're impacted by things that have happened in your life, and you're going to respond differently to certain things. You're going to protect yourself from certain things. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about that. The next piece is self-management, which is a little bit about the comments I made earlier. Self-management is the ability to control your impulse feelings and behaviors. Now, in recent years, what's been posted and what's been reviewed and laughed at and shared and over all the TikToks and social medias of the world is people's complete lack of self-management. The word triggered is a key component of that, right? So if you're someone that can be triggered and lose control over yourself and how you act, then your emotional intelligence profile is pretty low. You most likely don't have very good control over what you do. If you justify your actions on the fact that you were emotional or you got emotional in the moment, that's something that should be a red flag for you about yourself and how you respond to things. Next is social awareness. So I think social awareness in this century has gotten a lot more focused than previously, and we've always had impacts based on social awareness, right? So the pressure to go to church, the pressure to not go to church, the pressure to get married, the pressure to have kids, the pressure to get a college degree, all these pressures, that's part of the social balance or the social world that we live in. And of course, I'm talking about America and the Western world at the moment with social awareness, but socially, those are some of the things or expectations that we put on ourselves because of the environment that we came up in, right? So social awareness is understanding others, understanding other people's emotions and reacting to them appropriately. My view of social awareness is very simple. You are one soul. You have one life to live. You should live that life to find fulfillment for you in the best way that you can help and serve others. I think that's the way to have a happy life. But that's what that means, is that social awareness. How do you measure up to what you expect from yourself? And then how do you understand other people's emotions and why they react the way they do? That's the third quadrant. And then the fourth quadrant is relationship management. Managing relationships to move people in desired directions. So as a leader, sometimes depending on the company that you work for or the size of the organization you work for, some of those things be much more direct, and you have opportunities to talk one-on-one to each individual that's involved and explain the expectations and what's necessary and what you want to have happen and the desired direction. You want to paint that picture, you want to paint the success and show how we get there, and then you want to show that individual how their contribution daily impacts your ability to get to that goal and to that success. So as a leader, that relationship management is a key piece of being able to have that understanding. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management are all part of that. And I'm going to add as the thumbnail for this video piece that's got all this involved. It should be very useful. So how do you develop emotional intelligence? I think if you're used to team sports and those type things, that does help you with that. If you're from a large family, that does help you with that, because from day one, when you're developing just as a human being, you're developing those those four quadrants, so I think that's useful. But here are some other keys. So the way that you can become stronger from an emotional intelligence standpoint is becoming an observer. Tune in your emotions throughout the day and observe how you feel. Observe how you feel and observe how you respond to things that are happening, because then you become more self-aware. And then ask for feedback. Ask others for feedback on your emotional responses and behaviors. See how people view you. I've talked before in videos how perception is part of the real world. So you do want to see what that perception is. You want to be aware of that perception, because you may not mean something a certain way, but you may come off a certain way. So getting feedback on those behaviors is important, especially in a world of text messages, right? Emotion and thought doesn't come across in text messages. So you may offend or hurt someone's feelings in a text message that you never intended to do that with. So I always say professionally, it's best to stay away from text messages. Use a phone call or something like that gives people a better understanding of your emotion and your feelings around a subject. But that's a key piece, is ask for feedback. Next is acknowledge your emotional triggers. I talked about trigger earlier. I don't like the word. I think that you should be in control of your situation. But if you have things that do impact you and have power over how you respond, you need to be aware of that. So when those things come up, you can be flexible and you can kind of control how you're going to respond and adapt to the situation more appropriately. And it's going to put you in a more appropriate light. And then the last suggestion around developing emotional intelligence is practice mindfulness. Doing so will enhance your self-awareness and self-regulation skills. Mindfulness, look that word up, okay? You have mindfulness around your life, your expectations, and knowing yourself and how you respond. And you have mindfulness around just the situation, where you're at, the culture, and the folks that you are dealing with in this situation, okay? Emotional intelligence isn't about being nice all the time, okay? You can be angry and you can say no. Emotional intelligence is not about being nice all the time. A key component of emotional intelligence is setting boundaries, and you have to set boundaries. And from a leadership standpoint, you have to set boundaries for your team. You have to tell them if they're performing well or performing poorly. So it's not about being nice all the time or suppressing emotions. If you suppress emotions all the time and you never let your emotions out, never tell people how you feel, especially those closest to you, you're going to drive a wedge between you and them, because the longer you harbor that emotion and you build walls around it, the deeper of a wedge you're building to drive between you and those people and offend and break those relationships. So know that about emotion, and know that that's something that you have to handle, and you have to have knowledge of, and you have to work in a constructive manner to make sure that you're doing things appropriately that will support you, your health, and the health of the team around you. So hopefully this was useful today, emotional intelligence. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe, and we'll put more stuff up on this in the future. This is something that I study often and I read often a good deal about. And basically the book Successful Intelligence that I showed you earlier, this book here, it goes into some key things in this book. Specifically, one of the standouts is what intelligence is and how it's built, right? So a lot of our testing talks about memorization and those type things. Being able to memorize things is a piece of intelligence. But the idea that you learn something from experience, you fail forward, and then that experience is what teaches you, that's the most important imperative of intelligence. And then you have emotional intelligence, which is what you rely upon in relationships with other people. So we'll get a video out on this book here pretty soon. I like it. It's one of the best books on intelligence that I've read in my studies. So that's all for today. Be good.